They kicked her and newborn twins until her secret billionaire father pulled up in a Rolls-Royce. Here's a powerful prayer following your preferred pattern, including the welcome back and respect for your audience, with blessings for the upcoming Christmas. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Family, your own family story channel. May the heavenly God bless each of you this Christmas season with peace, joy, and endless love. May every woman in our family feel honored, strong, and cherished, carrying light and warmth wherever she goes. May your homes be filled with laughter, your hearts overflow with love, and every step you take be guided by divine protection. May this season bring miracles to your lives, hope to your souls, and unity to your families. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." The first kick landed on Laura House's shoulder blade as she tried to shield her newborn sons from the rain. "Get out!" George Coffey's mother hissed, her expensive heel connecting with Laura's ribs for the second time. The pain shot through Laura's chest, but she didn't cry out. She'd learned long ago that showing pain only encouraged them. "You and those bastards have bled this family dry long enough." Laura clutched River and Stone closer to her chest, their 3-week-old bodies impossibly small and fragile against the November cold. They were screaming, hungry, terrified by the violence their infant minds couldn't comprehend. The hospital had discharged them just 5 days ago. 5 days of Laura begging George's family for formula money while they spent thousands on new furniture for rooms she wasn't allowed to enter. 5 days of sleeping on the laundry room floor because George's mother said the guest beds were too good for someone like her. "Please," Laura whispered, tasting blood from where George had struck her mouth an hour earlier. Her lip was split, swelling. "Just let me get their blankets. Please, they're freezing." George stood in the doorway of the house Laura had scrubbed clean for 3 years, the house where she'd slept on a mat in the laundry room because his mother said the guest beds were too good for her. His eyes swept over his sons with the same expression he'd look at trash on the sidewalk. No recognition, no remorse. Just cold indifference that made Laura's stomach turn. "Those aren't mine," he said flatly. "DNA test proved it." Laura's chest constricted. "You never took a DNA test. You're lying. You know you're lying." "Doesn't matter." George's sister appeared behind him, holding the diaper bag Laura had packed with shaking hands an hour ago. She threw it into the mud at Laura's feet, the contents spilling across the wet ground. Bottles rolled into puddles, diapers soaked through immediately. "We don't want you. We never did. George only married you because you got pregnant, and now we know the truth." There was no truth. George was their father. Laura had never been with anyone else. But truth didn't matter when you were 24 years old with no family, no money, no high school diploma, because you dropped out to work and send George to community college. Truth didn't matter when the man you'd loved had spent 3 years teaching you that you were worthless, stupid, lucky he even looked at you. The door slammed, locks clicked with brutal finality. Laura heard them laughing inside, their voices muffled but unmistakable through the rain. She could hear George's mother saying something about good riddance and his sister's high-pitched cackle. She stood in the rain, her babies screaming against her chest, and felt something inside her break. Not her spirit. That had broken months ago when George first slapped her for burning his toast. This was different. This was the breaking of illusions, the final destruction of the girl who'd believed love could save her. The death of hope itself. Laura walked. She walked through the rain until her legs gave out at Riverside Park, until her arms shook so badly she was afraid she'd drop her sons. She collapsed on a bench under a broken streetlight, and for the first time since River and Stone were born, she let herself cry. "I'm sorry," she sobbed to them, her tears mixing with rain on their tiny faces. "I'm so sorry. You deserved better than me. You deserved a mother who could protect you." River's crying had turned hoarse, his voice breaking with exhaustion. His little face was red, scrunched up in misery. Stone had gone quiet in that terrible way that meant he'd given up. Laura tried to remember the last time she'd eaten. Yesterday morning? The day before? Her mind was too foggy to track time anymore. Her body felt hollow, emptied out. "Hey!" Laura's head snapped up. A man stood 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, rain soaking through his expensive coat. He was tall, maybe 35, with dark eyes that looked like they'd seen things they wished they hadn't. There was something gentle in his posture, careful, like he understood what it meant to approach someone who'd been hurt. "Go away," Laura said, turning her body to shield the twins. She'd heard the stories, women alone with babies, men who pretended to help. The man didn't move closer. He just stood there, rain streaming down his face, and looked at her like she was a person. Not trash, not a burden, a person. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that? "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. I heard them crying. "We're fine." "You're not." He said it simply. No judgment, just fact. Then he did something that made Laura's breath catch. He took off his coat, a coat that probably cost more than Laura had earned in her entire life, and held it out. His shirt was immediately soaked by the rain, clinging to his shoulders. "For them," he said. "They're cold." Laura stared at the coat, at this stranger who was getting drenched to offer warmth to babies he didn't know. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold river and stone. Water dripped from her hair into her eyes, mixing with tears she couldn't stop. The man stepped forward slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, and gently draped the coat over the twins. It was warm. It smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Safety. The baby's crying quieted slightly at the warmth. He sat down on the far end of the bench, giving her space. Water pooled around his feet, but he didn't seem to notice or care. "How old?" he asked. Laura's voice came out broken. 3 weeks. He nodded. Didn't say anything for a long moment, just sat there in the rain while Laura tried to stop shaking. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was the first peaceful moment Laura had experienced in weeks. Then Stone started crying again, that desperate newborn wail that meant he was hungry, that sound that pierced straight through to Laura's heart. Laura had nothing. The formula in the diaper bag was empty, the bottles scattered in the mud outside George's house. She'd used the last of it that morning before George's family threw her out. The man stood up. "There's a 24-hour store 2 blocks from here. I'll be back in 10 minutes. "Don't," Laura said. "I don't need your charity." He looked at her with those dark, sad eyes. "It's not charity. It's just—" He paused. "I had a daughter once. She had that same cry when she was hungry." Had. Past tense. The pain in his voice was unmistakable. He walked away before Laura could respond, and she sat there wondering if he'd come back. Men didn't come back. Men made promises and left you holding the pieces. That's what her mother had taught her. That's what George had proven true every single day of their marriage. But 8 minutes later, he returned. Formula, bottles, diapers, baby wipes, a blanket so soft Laura wanted to cry just touching it. He'd even bought a small umbrella and was holding it over her head now, shielding her and the twins from the rain that showed no signs of stopping. He sat down and started preparing a bottle like he'd done it 1,000 times. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, testing the temperature on his wrist before offering it to Laura. The gesture was so familiar, so paternal, that Laura felt her throat close up. She took it with shaking hands and fed Stone. The baby latched on desperately, his tiny hands gripping the bottle. River had fallen into an exhausted sleep against her chest, his tiny body finally warm under the stranger's coat. "What's your name?" the man asked. Laura hesitated. Giving her name felt dangerous, but this man had already done more for her in 15 minutes than George had in 3 years. Laura Howes." "I'm Daniel," he said. "Daniel Nation." They sat in silence while Stone drank. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. Laura's mind was spinning. This man, this stranger, had just spent money on her babies without asking for anything. Men always wanted something, always. "What do you want?" she finally asked. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "Nothing. I just see you." See her. When was the last time anyone had actually seen Laura? Not the maid, not the burden, not the worthless woman George had trained her to believe she was. When had anyone seen her as a human being who mattered, who deserved kindness? "I have a hotel room," Daniel said carefully, 2 blocks from here. "You and the babies could stay tonight. Get warm, get rest. I'll sleep in the lobby." Every instinct Laura had screamed danger. Strange men didn't offer hotel rooms without wanting something. But Stone had finished his bottle and was making that soft, content sound that meant he was finally full. River was sleeping peacefully for the first time in hours. They were warm under Daniel's coat. Safe. "No," Laura said. "We'll be fine." Daniel nodded like he'd expected that answer. He stood up, pulled a card from his wallet, and set it on the bench beside her. His movements were slow, deliberate, non-threatening. "Call if you change your mind," he said. "Any time, day or night. I mean that." He walked away without looking back, and Laura watched him disappear into the night. She picked up the card, simple, white, just a phone number, no name. The twins were warm, they were fed. For the first time in hours, they weren't crying. Laura put the card in her pocket and told herself she'd never use it. By 3 in the morning, when Stone woke up screaming and Laura's body was so cold she couldn't feel her fingers anymore, when she realized she had nowhere to go and no one to call, she pulled out the card. She found a payphone outside a closed gas station, fumbling with coins she'd found in her pocket, and dialed with shaking hands. The number went straight to a recording. "This number has been disconnected." Laura stood there in the dark, her babies crying, and felt hope die for the second time that night. She was alone. She had always been alone. She would always be alone. Chapter 2. The stranger who sees Laura learned that survival meant swallowing your pride and sleeping on concrete. The women's shelter on 5th Street had a waiting list 3 weeks long, but they let her sit in the common room during the day while she tried to figure out what came next. The twins were fussy, crying more than they had in the hospital, and Laura knew it was because she couldn't produce enough milk anymore. Her body was eating itself, consuming whatever reserves it had left. She'd had crackers and water for 3 days. The shelter director, a tired woman named Imani, who looked like she'd seen every tragedy the world could offer, had given Laura a voucher for formula, but it was enough for maybe 2 days. After that, Laura had no idea what she'd do. She couldn't work with newborns, couldn't afford childcare, couldn't even afford a bus pass to get to interviews. The cycle was vicious and unbreakable. She was changing River's diaper on the bathroom counter, trying to make the last wipe stretch to clean him properly, when she heard a voice behind her. "You're good at that." Laura spun around. Daniel Nation stood in the doorway of the women's bathroom, and her first instinct was to scream. Are you following me?" Her voice came out sharp, panicked. She grabbed River, holding him against her chest protectively. Daniel held up his hands. "I know how this looks. I'm sorry. But yes, I've been looking for you. Get out before I call the police." "I will," he said calmly. "But first, please let me explain. The phone number I gave you, I disconnected it on purpose. I had to, but I've been checking the shelters every day to find you." Laura finished fastening River's diaper, her hands shaking with adrenaline. "Why?" "Because I knew you'd try to call, and I knew when that number didn't work, you'd think I'd lied to you." Daniel stayed in the doorway, didn't come any closer. "I'm sorry, I should have explained, but I need you to understand something. I have enemies, people who watch my phone records, who track my movements. If I'd kept that number active, they would have found you." "Found me for what?" Laura demanded. "Who are you?" "Someone who wants to help. I have an apartment, empty. It's in a building I own. You and your boys could stay there. No rent, no conditions. He paused, and something flickered across his face. Pain. Old pain that had carved permanent lines around his eyes. "I can't watch babies suffer, not when I can do something about it." Laura stared at him. This man in his expensive clothes, with his expensive watch, offering free housing to a stranger. It was insane. It was a trap. Every survival instinct she'd developed over 3 years with George was screaming at her to run. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Nothing. Bullshit. Everyone wants something." Daniel met her eyes. "Okay, you're right. I want something. I want to know that when I go to sleep tonight, you and those babies aren't freezing on the street. That's what I want. That's all I want." River started crying. Stone joined in half a second later, their wails echoing off the bathroom tiles. Laura tried to soothe them, but they were hungry again, and she had maybe 1 bottle of formula left. "Maybe." "If I say no," Laura asked, "then I'll leave, and I'll sleep in my car outside this shelter until you change your mind." Laura laughed bitterly. "You're insane." "Probably." Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "But I'm also serious. I'll be out front, black sedan, you'll see me." He left. Laura stood there, her babies crying, and tried to think. She couldn't trust him. She couldn't trust anyone. But she also couldn't survive another night like the last 3. The shelter was full, the streets were cold, her babies were hungry. She went to the common room window and looked out. There was a black sedan parked across the street. Daniel sat in the driver's seat, reading something on his phone, just sitting there, waiting. He stayed there all day. At noon, Imani brought Laura a sandwich. "That man's still out there." "I know." "You know him?" "No," Laura whispered. At 3 in the afternoon, Laura checked again, still there. At 6 in the evening, Imani found Laura at the window again. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. "That man's been out there for 8 hours. You know him?" "No," Laura said again. "He dangerous?" "I don't know." Imani was quiet for a moment. "I've seen a lot of dangerous men, honey. They don't usually sit patiently in cars for 8 hours. They demand, they force, they take." Laura thought about George, about how he'd demanded, forced, taken everything from her until there was nothing left but fear and shame. About the nights he'd locked her out of the bedroom, making her sleep on the floor. About the times he'd withheld food as punishment for imagined slights. When the sun set and the temperature dropped, Daniel was still there. Laura watched him through the window as the streetlights flickered on. He hadn't moved except to adjust his seat, hadn't left even to get food or use a bathroom. Laura bundled up the twins and walked outside. The cold hit her immediately. Daniel got out of the car immediately, but he didn't approach, just stood there, waiting. "You're serious," Laura said. "About the apartment?" "Yes." "Show me." The apartment was 10 blocks away, on the 4th floor of a building that looked old but well-maintained. The lobby was clean. The elevator worked. Daniel unlocked the door and let Laura walk in first, standing back so she didn't feel trapped. It was beautiful. Hardwood floors that gleamed in the overhead light. Clean walls painted a soft cream color. A kitchen with actual appliances that looked like they worked. A bedroom with a real bed, not a mat on the floor. And next to the bedroom, a smaller room that was completely empty except for... Laura's breath caught. 2 cribs, brand new, still in boxes leaning against the wall. "I bought them this afternoon," Daniel said quietly from the doorway. "I wasn't sure if you'd come, but I hoped." Laura walked through the apartment, the twins heavy in her arms. There were groceries in the kitchen, real food, not just crackers. Formula, diapers stacked in the bathroom, baby clothes in the correct size, tags still on. Everything she needed, and more. "Why?" she asked. Her voice cracked on the word. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. "Do you believe in signs?" "No." "Neither did I. But 3 weeks ago I was in that park. Same bench, same time. And I saw a woman crying with 2 newborns, and all I could think was..." He stopped. "My daughter died when she was 6 months old. Car accident. My wife was driving. I wasn't there. And every day since I've wished I could go back and save them. I can't. But I can be here now, for you." Laura felt tears burning her eyes. I can't pay you. I'm not asking you to. What happens when you get tired of charity? When you want something in return? Daniel met her eyes. Then you leave. The door's not locked. You're not a prisoner. You're a mother who needs help. Let me help. Laura looked down at River and Stone. They'd finally stopped crying, lulled by the warmth of the apartment. They deserved better than shelters, better than park benches, better than watching their mother slowly break apart from exhaustion and fear. 1 week, she said. We'll stay 1 week, then I figure out what's next. Okay. Daniel helped her set up the cribs, his hands steady and sure. He showed her how to work the stove, how to adjust the heat, where the emergency numbers were posted on the refrigerator. Then he picked up his coat from the chair. You're leaving? Laura asked. Part of her was relieved. Part of her was terrified of being alone again. You need space. I'll come by tomorrow morning. Bring breakfast. If you need anything before then, there's a phone on the counter. My number's programmed in. He left before Laura could respond. She stood in the quiet apartment, her babies sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, and felt something terrifying bloom in her chest. Hope. Late that night, after she'd fed the twins and put them down, after she'd taken her first hot shower in a week, Laura couldn't sleep. She sat at the small kitchen table and Googled Daniel Nation on the apartment's Wi-Fi. Nothing. No social media, no business listings, no photos, no records of any kind. It was like Daniel Nation didn't exist. Laura stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Who was this man? What was he hiding? And why did that make her more afraid than George ever had? Chapter 3. The Lie. Daniel came back the next morning exactly when he said he would, carrying bags of groceries and a smile that didn't quite hide the exhaustion in his eyes. Laura opened the door halfway, keeping her body between him and the twins, sleeping in their cribs. You look terrible, she said. Didn't sleep much. Daniel held up the bags. I brought things for breakfast and lunch and probably dinner. I might have overestimated how much 2 babies eat. Despite herself, Laura almost smiled. Almost. She let him in, watching carefully as he unpacked the groceries. He moved around the kitchen like he'd done this before, making coffee without asking where anything was, starting eggs, asking her how she liked her toast. Normal, domestic. The kind of morning Laura used to dream about when she was young and stupid enough to believe in happy endings. The coffee smelled incredible. Laura couldn't remember the last time she'd had real coffee. Who are you? Laura asked suddenly. Daniel paused, spatula in hand. What do you mean? I searched your name. Daniel Nation doesn't exist. No social media, no business records, no photos, nothing. Laura crossed her arms. So I'll ask again. Who are you really? Daniel set down the spatula. He pulled out a chair at the small table and sat down heavily, like the weight of what he was about to say was already crushing him. You're right, he said. Daniel Nation isn't my real name. Laura's stomach dropped. Then what is? I can't tell you that. He met her eyes. 6 years ago, I testified against my business partner. He was running an investment fraud scheme that destroyed hundreds of families. Retirement accounts gone. College funds wiped out. People lost everything. Daniel's hands clenched on the table. I helped the FBI build their case. He went to prison for 20 years, but before they caught him, he hired people to kill me and my family. Laura sat down slowly. Your daughter. The car accident wasn't an accident, Daniel said quietly. Someone cut the brake lines. My wife and daughter died on the highway. I survived because I was supposed to be in that car, but I'd stayed late at work. His hands clenched on the table. After that, the FBI put me in witness protection. New name, new identity, new life. I can never go back to who I was. Everyone I knew thinks I'm dead. That's why there's no record of you. Yes. Daniel looked at her. I gave you a fake name because if I'd given you my real one, people who want me dead could find you, could use you to get to me. The disconnected phone number was protection. For both of us. Laura's mind was spinning. This sounded insane, like a movie plot, like something that happened to other people. But the pain in Daniel's eyes was real. She'd seen enough pain to recognize it. She'd lived with it for 3 years. "Why should I believe any of this?" she asked. "You shouldn't." Daniel stood up. "You should tell me to leave and never come back. You should protect yourself and your babies from whatever this is. Because I'm not safe, Laura. I'm never going to be safe. And being near me might make you unsafe too." He walked toward the door. "Wait," Laura said. Daniel stopped. "I don't believe you," Laura said, "but I'm going to watch what you do, not what you say. Show me who you are." Daniel turned around. Something like relief crossed his face. "Okay." He came back every morning for the next 2 weeks, never stayed more than an hour, brought groceries, taught Laura how to bathe the twins properly, the temperature of the water, how to support their heads, how to make it feel safe for them. He helped her set up a budget with the small amount of government assistance she qualified for, showing her how to stretch every dollar. He never asked to stay longer, never pushed for anything. The twins were almost 2 months old when Laura started to let her guard down. It was a mistake. One evening, Daniel was showing her how to soothe River's colic, gentle pressure on the belly, warm compress, bicycle legs, when there was a knock at the door. Laura opened it to find a woman in her 40s, expensively dressed, with cold eyes and a predatory smile that made Laura's skin crawl. "Is Daniel here?" the woman asked. "Who's asking?" Laura said. The woman looked past her into the apartment, her eyes scanning everything like she was cataloguing it. "Daniel! Your wife is looking for you." Laura felt the floor drop out from under her. Daniel appeared behind Laura, his face carefully blank. "Gwendolyn, what are you doing here?" "Looking for my husband," the woman said sweetly. "You haven't been returning my calls. I've left 17 messages." Laura stepped back. "Your wife?" "Ex-wife," Daniel corrected quickly. "We've been divorced for 2 years, Gwendolyn. You know that." "Separated," Gwendolyn corrected. "The papers were never finalized. Technically, we're still married." She smiled at Laura, and there was cruelty in it. "I see my husband has been playing house with someone new." "How sweet. How predictable." Laura looked at Daniel. "Is she telling the truth?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. "Get out," Laura said quietly. "Laura, let me explain." "Get out," Laura's voice cracked. "Both of you, get out of my apartment." "It's not your apartment," Gwendolyn said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She was enjoying this. "It's my husband's building, which means it's my building too. Community property." Laura felt something break inside her chest. Of course it was too good to be true. Of course there were strings attached. There were always strings, always conditions, always a price to pay. Daniel grabbed Gwendolyn's arm. "Leave. Now." "Make me," Gwendolyn said. Then she looked at Laura, really looked at her, taking in her cheap clothes and tired face. "You should know, sweetheart. My husband has a type. Poor, vulnerable, grateful. You're not the first charity case he's brought home. There was one before you, 2 years ago. Same story. Damsel in distress. He gets bored eventually." Daniel pushed Gwendolyn out into the hallway. Laura heard them arguing, heard Gwendolyn's voice getting louder, more vicious, saying things Laura couldn't quite make out, but could feel the venom in. Then Daniel came back inside, alone. "She's lying," he said. "Is she your wife?" "Ex-wife. The divorce it got complicated with the witness protection. The paperwork is—" "Stop," Laura held up her hand. "Just stop. I don't care about the details. I care that you lied to me. I didn't lie. I told you I was divorced. Separated isn't divorced." Laura's voice rose, and River started crying in his crib. She went to pick him up, her whole body shaking. "You let me believe you were safe. You let me start to trust you, and the whole time you had a wife who knows where I live." "She's not my wife," Daniel said, "and she won't hurt you. I'll handle her. Like you handled protecting your family." The words came out before Laura could stop them, cruel and cutting. She saw them land, saw Daniel flinch, like she'd struck him. Daniel flinched, like she'd struck him. Laura immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "No, you're right." Daniel's voice was hollow. "I couldn't protect them. I can't protect anyone. I thought maybe this time, but you're right. You should stay away from me." He walked to the door. "There's a coffee shop downstairs," he said without looking at her. "I'll be there every morning at 7, if you need me. But I won't come up here anymore, I promise." The door closed behind him. Laura sank onto the floor, River in her arms, and cried. She cried because she'd started to believe, started to hope, started to think maybe Daniel was different. But men were never different. 2 days later, Laura ran out of formula. She had no money. The government assistance wouldn't process for another week. She tried to make what she had stretch, diluting it with water the way her mother used to when times were desperate, but Stone was screaming with hunger, his little face purple with rage and desperation, and River wasn't far behind. At 6:45 in the morning, Laura went down to the coffee shop. Daniel was already there. He looked up when she walked in, and his eyes widened. "I need help," Laura said. Daniel stood up immediately. "What do you need?" Before Laura could answer, a woman approached their table, late 30s, professional. She looked at Daniel with recognition. "Mr. Nation," she said. "Your wife is looking for you." Laura felt her heart stop. But this time Daniel didn't flinch. He looked the woman straight in the eye and said, "I don't have a wife. Tell Gwendolyn if she sends another person to harass me, I'm filing a restraining order. And tell her my lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers she's been refusing to sign." The woman blinked, startled, and walked away quickly. Daniel turned to Laura. "I filed divorce papers yesterday. For real this time. No more excuses. No more complications. Gwendolyn and I are done. I should have done it months ago." Laura wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. "The twins need formula," she said instead. "Okay," Daniel said, "let's go get some." They walked to the store together, and for the first time, Laura let herself wonder. What if he was telling the truth? Chapter 4. The Wife. Daniel bought enough formula to last a month. Laura tried to tell him it was too much, but he just kept adding cans to the cart while explaining the nutritional differences between brands, like he'd memorized the labels. He pointed out which ones had more iron, which were better for sensitive stomachs, which the pediatricians recommended. When they got back to the apartment, he helped her organize everything in the kitchen, creating a system so she'd know when supplies were running low. "You don't have to do this," Laura said. "I know." Daniel lined up the formula cans with careful precision, labels facing out. "But I want to, if you'll let me." Laura watched him work. This man who'd lied about his name, who might still be married, who'd appeared in her life like some strange guardian angel with secrets carved into his bones. She should kick him out. She should never speak to him again. Every rational part of her brain was screaming at her to cut him off, but Stone was sleeping peacefully in his crib with a full stomach. River was cooing at the mobile Daniel had installed above the changing table, and Laura was so tired of fighting alone. "Why should I believe anything you say?" she asked quietly. Daniel stopped organizing. He turned to face her, and in his eyes Laura saw something she recognized. The same exhaustion she felt, the same bone-deep weariness of surviving when you'd lost everything that mattered. "You shouldn't," he said. "Words are cheap. So watch what I do, not what I say. I'll show up every day. I'll bring what you need. I'll leave when you ask, and I won't make promises I can't keep. What if I never trust you? Then I'll keep showing up anyway." Daniel's voice was steady. "Because those babies deserve someone reliable in their life, even if their mother hates me." "I don't hate you," Laura admitted. The words surprised her. "I just don't know what you want from me." "I don't want anything, I just..." Daniel stopped, searching for words. When my daughter died, I stopped believing in second chances. I thought I'd lost my opportunity to be the kind of man who makes a difference. But then I saw you in that park and I realized, maybe I can't save everyone, but I can be here for you, if you'll let me. Laura felt tears burning her eyes. That's a lot of pressure. Then don't think of it as pressure. Think of it as... Daniel smiled sadly. A guy trying to be useful. Over the next few days, Daniel proved himself useful in ways Laura hadn't expected. He fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom that had been dripping constantly. He taught her how to cook cheap, nutritious meals that would keep her strength up. Beans and rice in a dozen different variations, each one somehow different. He showed her how to apply for jobs online, how to write a resume when you had no experience, how to navigate the welfare system without losing your dignity in the process. He never stayed past 8 in the evening, never asked personal questions, never touched her except for the occasional accidental brush of hands when passing something. And slowly, against every instinct Laura had, she started to trust him. It was late afternoon when everything changed. Laura was feeding River when Daniel showed up with his usual bag of groceries. But this time, his face was different. Tense, worried, like he was carrying news he didn't want to deliver. "What's wrong?" Laura asked. Daniel set down the groceries. He sat down at the kitchen table, and Laura noticed his hands were shaking slightly. "I need to tell you something, and you're probably going to hate me for it." Laura's stomach dropped. "What?" "A lawyer is going to contact you soon," Daniel said, "about your father." "My father's dead. He died when I was 5. "No." Daniel met her eyes. "He's alive, and he's looking for you." Laura stood up so fast she nearly dropped River. "What are you talking about?" "Your father's name is Garrison Howes. He's a real estate developer, very wealthy, very powerful." Daniel's voice was careful, measured. "He left your mother before you were born. She told you he was dead to protect you from him." Laura felt like the floor was tilting. "How do you know this?" "Because he hired me to find you." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "What?" Laura whispered. 8 months ago, Garrison Howes contacted me through an intermediary. He was dying, lung cancer. He wanted to find his daughter before he passed. He'd been searching for years but couldn't locate you. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. "He knew I had resources, connections from my old life. He paid me $50,000 to find Laura Howes and report back." Laura felt sick. "You were following me?" "Yes." "Since before the twins were born?" "Yes." "You watched me with George. You saw him hurt me. And you didn't do anything." "I couldn't," Daniel said, and his voice cracked. "My job was to find you and report back. Nothing else. I wasn't supposed to interfere. I wasn't supposed to make contact. But when I saw what George was doing to you, when I saw you were pregnant and he was pushing you around, screaming at you in public..." He stopped. "I couldn't just watch anymore, so I stopped reporting to your father. I stayed away. I tried to let you live your life." "Until that night in the park," Laura said. "Until I saw George's family kick you into the street with 2 newborns, and I realized I couldn't be a spectator anymore. Even if it meant breaking my contract, even if it meant your father would..." Daniel stopped again. "Would what?" "He's dying, Laura. Lung cancer, stage 4, 6 months, maybe less, and he's desperate to meet you before he goes. To make amends, he says." Laura sat down slowly, River still in her arms. Her father, alive, rich, dying, and desperate, and Daniel had been paid to spy on her. "Get out," she said quietly. "Laura, get out!" Laura's scream woke Stone, and both twins started crying. "You were paid to stalk me, to report on me like some kind of project, and you didn't think to mention this?" "I was trying to protect you," Daniel said. "Your father he's not a good man, Laura. He's controlling, manipulative. He left your mother because she wasn't suitable for his image. He only wants you now because he's dying and doesn't want to go to hell alone. That's not your choice to make." Laura was shaking. "You don't get to decide what I know about my own life." "You're right." Daniel's voice was hollow. "You're absolutely right. I should have told you the first night. I should have been honest. But I was selfish. I wanted—" He stopped. "What? What did you want?" "I wanted to know you without the complication of your father. I wanted to help you because I chose to, not because I was paid to." Daniel looked at her with those dark, sad eyes. "I fell in love with who you are, Laura. Not because Garrison House hired me, in spite of it." Laura felt like she couldn't breathe. "You don't know me. I know you're strong. I know you love your boys more than life itself. I know you survive things that would break most people." Daniel's voice was raw. "And I know you deserve better than a liar who was too much of a coward to tell you the truth." He walked to the door. "The lawyer's name is Thaddeus Crane," Daniel said without turning around. "He'll contact you within the week. Your father wants to meet you. He's offering you money. A lot of money. Enough to never worry about formula or rent or anything else." "I don't want his money." "I know." Daniel opened the door. "But you should hear what he has to say. Make your own choice. Don't let me make it for you. You deserve that much." He left. Laura sat in the quiet apartment, her babies crying, and felt the weight of betrayal settle into her bones. Daniel had lied. He'd been paid to watch her. Everything. The coat in the park, the apartment, the formula, the kindness, all of it might have been part of some elaborate plan to deliver her to a father she'd never known. That night, Laura couldn't sleep. She researched Garrison House on her phone until her eyes burned and the sun started to rise. He was everywhere. Real estate empire worth billions. Political connections that went all the way to the governor's office. Philanthropist with buildings named after him. Billionaire with a legacy. And in one old photo from 25 years ago, standing next to a beautiful black woman at a charity gala, Laura saw her own face staring back at her. Her mother. Young, radiant, in love, wearing a dress that probably cost more than she made in a year. The caption read, "Garrison House and companion at the Metropolitan Foundation Gala." Companion, not girlfriend, not partner, not the mother of his child. Companion, like she was decoration, disposable, interchangeable. Laura understood why her mother had lied, why she'd said he was dead, why she'd worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat rather than asking this man for a single dollar. When the lawyer called 3 days later, Laura answered. "Miss House," Thaddeus Crane's smooth voice said, "your father would very much like to meet you. He's asked me to arrange a meeting at your earliest convenience." Laura looked at River and Stone, sleeping peacefully in their cribs. "Tell him I'll think about it," she said. And she meant it. Chapter 5. The Father. She never knew. Garrison House lived in a mansion that made Laura's apartment look like a closet. The driver, because apparently billionaires had drivers, pulled up to iron gates that opened automatically, smooth and silent. The driveway was longer than the street Laura had grown up on, lined with trees that had probably been there for 100 years. The house looked like something from a movie, all white columns and perfectly manicured gardens that probably required a full-time staff of landscapers. Laura held River and Stone closer as the driver opened her door with practiced efficiency. "Miss House," he said politely, "Mr. House is expecting you in the conservatory." The conservatory. Laura didn't even know what that was. A woman in a uniform met her at the door and led her through rooms filled with art and furniture that probably cost more than Laura would earn in her lifetime. Paintings that looked like they belonged in museums, sculptures on pedestals. The twins were wide-eyed and quiet, overwhelmed by the sheer size of everything. Their tiny heads turned, trying to take it all in. Garrison House sat in a sunroom surrounded by plants, orchids and ferns and things Laura couldn't name, an oxygen tank beside his chair. He was thin in the way terminal illness makes people thin, his expensive suit hanging off his frame. But his eyes were sharp and calculating, missing nothing as Laura entered. He looked at Laura like she was a business investment he was considering. "Sit," he said. Not a greeting, not "hello" or "it's nice to meet you." A command. Laura sat on the edge of an uncomfortable antique chair, the twins in her lap. She kept her spine straight, refusing to slouch even though the chair seemed designed to make her feel small. Garrison studied her for a long moment. "You look like your mother. Same eyes, same stubborn set to your jaw." "I wouldn't know," Laura said. "She died when I was 12. Something flickered across Garrison's face. Regret? Guilt? It was gone too fast to identify, replaced by that cold businessman's mask. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said formally. The words sounded rehearsed. "Are you?" Garrison's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You have her fire too. She never let me get away with anything, always calling me on my bullshit. Is that why you left her? Because she had opinions?" "I left because she was unsuitable for my lifestyle," Garrison said bluntly, no apology in his voice. "I was building an empire. I needed a wife who understood the requirements of that position, someone who could host dinners, make connections, play the game. Your mother didn't fit." Laura felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp. She wasn't a job requirement. She was a person. She loved you. "She was also pregnant with you," Garrison continued as if Laura hadn't spoken. "I offered to provide financial support if she signed a non-disclosure agreement. Generous support. Enough to live comfortably. She refused. Disappeared. Spent the next 24 years hiding from me. She was protecting me from you." "Perhaps." Garrison leaned back in his chair, the oxygen tube shifting. "But now I'm dying, and I find I have regrets. Chief among them, I never knew my daughter. I never gave you the opportunities you deserved." Laura looked down at River and Stone. They were watching Garrison with those wide baby eyes. "What do you want from me?" "I want to make amends. I'm leaving you $400 million in my will." The number was so large, it didn't even sound real. 400 million. Laura couldn't conceptualize that kind of money. It was abstract, meaningless. "I don't want your money," Laura said. "Don't be foolish. You're living in charity housing with 2 infants. You have no education, no job prospects, no support system." Garrison's voice was cold, clinical. "You need my money, whether you want it or not. I'll figure it out." "How?" "By depending on Daniel Nation." Garrison's eyes narrowed. "Yes, I know about him. I know everything about you, Laura. I've had investigators following you since he stopped reporting in, including the fact that you're raising another man's children alone, that you're unmarried, that your husband kicked you out." Laura stood up. "We're leaving." "Sit down." Garrison's command cracked like a whip. Laura found herself sitting before she could think about it. "I'm offering you a future. Your boys could have the best education money can buy. You could have security, stability, a life your mother never had. All I ask in return is that you let me be part of your life for the time I have left." Laura hesitated. She looked at the oxygen tank, the too thin frame, the way Garrison's hands shook slightly when he reached for his water glass. Liver spots on skin like paper. He was dying, and he was alone. "What does being part of my life mean?" Laura asked. "Weekly visits. Bring the boys. Let me get to know them. Let me teach you about the business so you can manage your inheritance properly." Garrison's voice softened just slightly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'd like to try to be a grandfather to your sons, if you'll allow it." Laura thought about her mother, working herself to death to keep them fed. Working until her hands bled. Working until her heart gave out at 42 because she'd never been to a doctor, couldn't afford to take time off. She thought about the times they'd had their electricity shut off, or gone to bed hungry, or worn shoes with holes because new ones weren't in the budget. If her mother had taken Garrison's money, would she still be alive? "I need to think about it," Laura said. "Of course." Garrison gestured to the lawyer who'd been standing silently in the corner like a piece of furniture. "Thaddeus will provide you with the details of the trust fund. It's already established. The money is yours regardless of whether you continue seeing me. Consider it back payment for 24 years of child support I should have provided." Why? Because you're my daughter, and because I'm trying to buy absolution. Garrison smiled bitterly. At least I'm honest about my motives. I'm a bastard, but I'm not a liar. Laura left the mansion with a folder full of documents she couldn't understand and a head full of thoughts she couldn't organize. The driver took her back to the apartment. Daniel was waiting on the steps outside, like he'd been there for hours. He looked up when she approached. "How did it go?" he asked. Laura walked past him without answering. She got inside, put the twins in their cribs, and then stood at the window, looking out at the city. Daniel appeared in the doorway. He didn't come in, just waited. "Laura?" "He offered me $400 million, she said quietly. Daniel didn't react, like he'd expected it. "Did you know?" Laura asked. "I knew he was setting up a trust fund. I didn't know the amount. He wants me to visit him every week, let him be a grandfather to River and Stone." Laura turned to face Daniel. "What should I do?" "What do you want to do?" "I want to tell him to go to hell," Laura said. "But that money could change everything for my boys. They could go to college, have opportunities I never had, be safe." "Money doesn't guarantee safety," Daniel said quietly. "Says the man who's never had to choose between feeding his child and paying rent." The words were cruel, but Daniel didn't flinch. "You're right. I don't know what it's like to have nothing, but I do know what it's like to sell your soul for security, and I can tell you, you can't ever buy it back." Laura looked at the folder in her hands. "What if he's different than you think? What if he really does want to make amends?" "Then you give him a chance," Daniel said. "But watch him carefully. Men like Garrison Howes don't give away $400 million without strings attached. There are always strings." "What kind of strings?" "Control, influence, the ability to shape your life the way he sees fit." Daniel moved closer, but didn't cross the threshold. "Just promise me something. Don't let him make you believe you owe him anything. That money is compensation for 24 years of abandonment. It's not a gift. It's a debt he's paying. You don't owe him gratitude or obedience or anything else." Laura looked at Daniel, at this man who'd lied to her and stalked her, and still somehow managed to be the most honest person in her life. "Why do you care?" she asked. Daniel met her eyes. "Because I'm in love with you, and I want you to be free. Even if that means you never trust me again. Even if that means you take your father's money and never speak to me again." He left before Laura could respond. That night, she read through the trust fund documents. The money was real, accessible, hers with no conditions except meeting with Garrison once a week until he died. 6 months, the doctors had said. Maybe less. She could survive anything for 6 months. Laura called Thaddeus Crane and agreed to the terms. Chapter 6. The Betrayal. The weekly visits to Garrison's mansion became a ritual Laura learned to tolerate. Garrison would hold River and Stone with surprising gentleness, telling them stories about business deals and political victories they were too young to understand. He'd quiz Laura on financial terms, test her knowledge of his company's holdings, push her to be sharper, smarter, more worthy of the Howes name. He was grooming her, she realized, training her to take over his empire. Laura hated it, but she also found herself learning things. How to read a contract and spot the hidden clauses, how to negotiate without showing your hand, how power worked when you had money behind you, how men like Garrison operated in boardrooms and backrooms, how to make people underestimate you and then use that to your advantage. The twins were almost 2 months old when Garrison said something that made Laura's blood run cold. "I've been thinking about your living situation," he said, bouncing Stone gently on his knee. The baby was reaching for Garrison's oxygen tube. "That apartment isn't suitable for my grandsons." "It's fine," Laura said carefully. "It's Charity, from Daniel Nation, a man you barely know." Garrison's eyes were sharp, calculating. He set Stone down carefully. "Did you know he's been watching you since before the twins were born?" Laura's stomach dropped. "How do you—" "I'm the one who hired him," remember? Garrison smiled thinly. I've had my investigators tracking his movements, making sure he was doing the job I paid him for, even after he stopped reporting to me. You said you stopped paying him months ago. I did, but that doesn't mean I stopped watching. Garrison handed Stone back to Laura. Did you know Daniel has been photographing you, documenting your movements? Laura felt sick. What? Garrison nodded to Thaddeus, who pulled out a tablet and handed it to Laura with practiced efficiency. The screen showed photos, dozens of them. Laura at the grocery store when she was pregnant, her hand protective over her swollen belly. Laura at the park, sitting on a bench looking exhausted. Laura at the hospital after giving birth, exhausted and alone, being wheeled out with 2 car seats. Laura sleeping on the bench the night George's family kicked her out, the twins crying in her arms, all taken from a distance, all without her knowledge, all invasions of her privacy. Where did you get these? Laura whispered. From Daniel's cloud storage. He's been documenting you for months, every move you made. Garrison's voice was cold, matter of fact. Why do you think he was so invested in helping you? It wasn't kindness, it was obsession. Laura couldn't breathe. He said he was protecting me. From what? From me? Garrison laughed bitterly. I'm a dying old man hooked up to an oxygen tank. Daniel Nation is the one you should be afraid of. Laura stood up, clutching the twins. I need to go. Wait. Garrison's voice was sharp. I'm not telling you this to upset you. I'm telling you because you need to understand something. Daniel was paid to find you and bring you to me. Everything he's done has been part of that job. He said he stopped working for you. People say a lot of things for money. Garrison pulled out another folder, this one thick with documents, bank statements, emails, contracts. I have documented proof that Daniel Nation received $50,000 from me 8 months ago. I have emails showing he agreed to locate you and report your movements. I have photographs proving he followed through. This is what I paid for. Laura felt tears burning her eyes. Why are you showing me this? Because you're my daughter, and someone needs to protect you from men who see you as a means to an end. Garrison stood up slowly, leaning on his cane. Daniel Nation is not your friend. He's not your savior. He's an employee who got too involved with the assignment. Laura left the mansion in a daze. The driver took her back to the apartment and she sat in the car for a long time before going inside, staring at the building where she'd thought she was safe. The photos kept flashing through her mind, Daniel watching her, following her, documenting her life like she was some kind of project, some kind of specimen to be studied. When she finally went upstairs, Daniel was waiting in the hallway. We need to talk, Laura said. Daniel followed her inside. He looked tired, worried, like he knew what was coming. Garrison showed you, he said. It wasn't a question. The photos? Yes. Laura set the twins in their cribs, then turned to face him. You've been watching me since I was pregnant. Yes. You photographed me without permission. Yes. You were paid $50,000 to stalk me. Yes. Daniel didn't make excuses, didn't try to explain, just stood there and took it. Why? Laura asked. Why keep doing it after you stopped working for him? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Because I needed to know you were safe. Even when I couldn't be near you, I needed to know George wasn't... He stopped. I know how it looks. I know it's wrong. But I couldn't just walk away. I couldn't stop caring what happened to you. So you watch me from the shadows like some kind of creep. Yes. Laura laughed bitterly. At least you're honest about it. I've lied to you about enough things. The least I can do is tell you the truth now. Daniel's voice was hollow. Garrison hired me to find you and bring you to him. I followed you for months. I documented everything, your routines, where you went, who you saw. I was going to hand over the evidence and collect my final payment. What changed? I saw how George treated you. I saw you protecting your stomach when he'd push you. I saw you crying in the car after he'd scream at you in public. I saw the bruises you tried to hide." Daniel met her eyes. "And I realized, if I brought you to Garrison, he'd use that pain. He'd manipulate you with promises of rescue. So I didn't tell him where you were. I cut contact. I tried to stay away. Until the night in the park. Until I saw them kick you and those babies into the street, and I couldn't be a spectator anymore. I had to do something, anything." Laura wanted to scream. She wanted to throw him out. She wanted to tell him he was no better than George or Garrison or any other man who'd ever tried to control her. But a small part of her understood, because hadn't she been watching him too, studying his movements, his patterns, trying to figure out if he was safe? "The apartment," Laura said. "Is it really yours?" "Yes, bought and paid for with my own money. The formula, the cribs, all of it?" "I bought all of it. No one else's money. No strings attached except my own guilt." "Except the strings of your guilt?" Daniel flinched. "Yes." Laura sat down on the couch. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Garrison says you're obsessed with me. You say you love me. How do I know what's real? How do I know any of this is real?" "You don't," Daniel said quietly. "That's the problem with being lied to. You can't trust anything anymore. Even the truth sounds like manipulation." He walked to the door. "For what it's worth," he said without turning around, "the only thing I've ever wanted was for you to be free. Free from George, free from Garrison, free from me. I wanted you to have choices. Choices I didn't even know I had because you hid the truth from me." "I know." Daniel's hand was on the doorknob. "I'll leave you alone now. The apartment is yours. No conditions. The deed is already in your name. You never have to see me again. I'll disappear if that's what you want." He opened the door. "Daniel," Laura said. He stopped. "Did you mean it when you said you loved me?" Daniel turned around, and in his eyes Laura saw the answer before he spoke. "Yes," he said simply. "I love you. I've loved you since I saw you tell George to go to hell in a grocery store parking lot when you were 6 months pregnant. You were magnificent. I've loved you through every terrible decision I made after that, and I'll love you when you tell me to never come back." He left. Laura sat in the quiet apartment and realized something terrible. She believed him, and she had no idea what to do with that. Chapter 7. The Choice. George showed up 3 days later. Laura was feeding River when she heard the knock. She looked through the peephole and felt her blood turn to ice. George stood in the hallway, wearing a new suit that probably cost more than he'd ever spent on her in their entire marriage, his hair freshly cut at an expensive salon. He looked sober, clean, almost like the man Laura had fallen in love with when she was 19 and stupid enough to believe promises. She didn't open the door. "Laura," George called through the wood. "Please, I just want to talk. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "Go away. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you." His voice was thick with emotion. "But I've changed. I'm in therapy now. AA meetings every single day, sometimes twice a day. I want to be a better man." His voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. "I want to be a father to my sons." Laura looked at River, at his tiny, perfect face, completely innocent and unaware of the man on the other side of the door, and felt rage burn through her chest. "They're not your sons," she said through the door. "You gave up that right when you kicked us into the street." "I was drunk, I was angry, I wasn't thinking straight." George pressed his hand against the door. She could hear it. "But I'm sober now, 60 days clean. I have a chip and everything, and I've been talking to your father. He thinks we should give it another shot. For the boys." Laura's hand froze on the bottle. "What?" "Garrison called me last week, said he wanted to meet with me. We talked about what's best for River and Stone. We had lunch at his club. He agrees they need a stable 2-parent home." George's voice turned pleading. "He's offered to set us up in a house. A real house with a yard. Give me a job in his company. VP of Operations, Laura. 6 figures. Support us as a family. All you have to do is come home." Laura put River in his crib and opened the door just enough to look George in the eye. She wanted him to see her face when she said this. "Listen to me very carefully," she said, her voice cold as ice. I will never come back to you. Not for money, not for the boys, not for anything in this world. But Garrison said, I don't care what Garrison said. He doesn't control my life. Laura's voice was steel. You hit me, you screamed at me, you pushed me downstairs, you made me believe I was worthless, that I should be grateful you even looked at me, and now you want me to forgive all of that because you've been sober for 60 days. I've changed. People don't change in 60 days. They just get better at hiding who they are. Laura started to close the door. Don't come back here. George shoved his foot in the doorway. His face changed, twisted into something uglier. You can't keep my sons from me. I have rights. Parental rights. You have nothing. The birth certificates list you as the father, but you told everyone those babies weren't yours. You denied them publicly. You have no legal claim. I'll sue for custody. Garrison will back me up. He'll give me the best lawyers money can buy, the best in the state, the best in the country. George smiled, and it was the same cruel smile Laura remembered from all those nights when he'd enjoyed watching her cry. And he will. He's already said so. Laura felt ice slide down her spine. Why would he do that? Because he wants you married, respectable, raising his grandsons in a proper family with a mother and father. George leaned closer, his breath hot through the crack in the door. He thinks Daniel Nation is a bad influence, wants him out of your life completely, and if I'm the father of your children, Garrison can make sure that happens. He has judges in his pocket, Laura. You can't win this. The door slammed in George's face. Laura stood there shaking, River and Stone both crying now. They'd picked up on her distress and felt walls closing in around her. Garrison was trying to control her life, using George as a weapon, threatening to take her children if she didn't comply. This was what he'd meant by strings attached. She called Thaddeus Crane. Tell Garrison I want to meet with him, today, right now. The lawyer's voice was smooth, unbothered. Of course, Miss Howes. I'll arrange it immediately. Mr. Howes is available this afternoon. Laura showed up at Garrison's mansion 2 hours later, the twins in her arms and fury in her eyes. Garrison sat in his usual chair, looking pleased with himself, satisfied, like a cat that had caught a mouse. I see you spoke with George, he said. You had no right to contact him. I had every right. Those are my grandsons. I want them raised properly with structure and discipline. Garrison gestured to the empty chair. Sit down, Laura. Let's discuss this like adults. There's nothing to discuss. I'm not going back to George. Then you'll lose custody of the boys. Garrison's voice was cold, final, matter of fact. George will sue. I'll fund his legal team, the best family law attorneys in the state. I'll testify that you're an unfit mother, homeless when you gave birth, uneducated, living off the charity of a man with questionable motives who's been stalking you. No judge will give you custody when presented with those facts. Laura felt the room spin. You can't do that. I can, and I will, unless you agree to my terms. Which are, marry George, live in the house I provide, 5 bedrooms, pool, good schools in the district. Let me guide the boys' upbringing, make sure they have the Howes name and legacy. In return, you'll have security, stability, and the $50 million trust fund I've established for you, separate from the $400 million. $50 million. More than the $400 million he'd promised. Less than what she deserved, but enough to ensure she'd never struggle again. Enough to buy her compliance. What about Daniel? Laura asked. He'll be removed from the situation, completely. Restraining order if necessary. Garrison's eyes were hard as diamonds. I don't want that man anywhere near my grandsons. He's unstable, obsessive, dangerous. Laura looked down at River and Stone. They were sleeping peacefully, unaware their future was being decided like a business transaction, like a merger or acquisition. I need time to think, she said. You have 24 hours. Then George files for custody, and I file affidavits supporting his claim. Garrison leaned back in his chair. I'm dying, Laura. I want to know my grandsons will be raised properly before I go, with discipline, structure, and the right values. Is that so much to ask? Laura left without answering. She walked for hours, the twins heavy in her arms, her mind spinning. Garrison could take them. He had the money, the lawyers, the influence, the connections, judges who owed him favors. She had nothing. Except Daniel had given her an apartment in her name. That was something. That was proof she had stability, wasn't homeless anymore. She went to the coffee shop where Daniel sat every morning. He was there, like he always was, reading a book, coffee gone cold in front of him. "I need your help," Laura said. Daniel looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Hope." "Anything. Tell me what you need." "Garrison is trying to force me to marry George. He's threatening to take the twins if I don't." Laura sat down across from him. Her hands were shaking. "Can he do that? Legally?" "Legally. It would be difficult, but with enough money and the right lawyers." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Yes, he could make a case, a compelling one. So what do I do?" "You fight back." Daniel pulled out his phone. "I know people, good lawyers who specialize in custody cases. They owe me favors from my old life. I can't afford lawyers." "I can." Daniel met her eyes. "Let me help you, please. This is something I can actually do." Laura wanted to say no, wanted to tell him she'd handle it herself, but she was so tired of being alone, so tired of fighting with no allies. "Okay," she whispered. Daniel made 3 phone calls right there in the coffee shop. By the time Laura got back to the apartment, she had a legal team ready to fight Garrison. But that night, lying in bed with the twins sleeping beside her, Laura realized something. Fighting Garrison would take months, maybe years. And during that time, River and Stone would be caught in the middle of a war between adults, used as weapons, leverage. There had to be another way. She thought about what Daniel had said, about being free, about having choices, and she made a decision that terrified her. Chapter 8. The Woman Who Rises. Laura called Garrison the next morning at 7 a.m. while he was probably having breakfast. "I have a counteroffer," she said. "I'm listening." He sounded amused, like this was a game. "You give me the $400 million trust fund, full access, no conditions, no oversight, no strings. In return, I'll bring the boys to visit you once a month until you die. 1 visit, 60 minutes. Garrison laughed. "That's not acceptable. Then I walk away from all of it. The money, the visits, everything. You'll die alone in that mansion, and your grandsons will never know you existed. I'll tell them their grandfather was dead before they were born." Laura's voice was steady. "Your choice. You have 60 seconds. There was a long silence. Laura could hear him breathing through the phone, hear the oxygen tank in the background. "Once a week," Garrison finally said. "Non-negotiable. Twice a month. 3 times a month. Final offer, and you stay for 2 hours, not 1. Laura thought about it. 3 times a month, 6 hours total. For 6 months at most, probably less, given how sick he looked. She could survive that. Fine, but the money transfers to my account immediately, before the first visit, and George gets nothing. No job, no house, no contact with the boys. Ever. Done." Garrison's voice held grudging respect. "You're learning fast. Your mother would be proud. I had a good teacher. She taught me never to trust men who buy people." The money appeared in Laura's account that afternoon. $400 million. More money than Laura could conceptualize. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. She stared at the number on her phone screen and felt nothing. No joy, no relief. Just a cold understanding that this was the price of her father's guilt. Blood money, hush money. The first thing Laura did was hire her own lawyer. Not one of Daniel's contacts, her own. A woman named Tessa Riggs, who specialized in protecting abuse survivors from their abusers, who knew all the tricks men like George and Garrison used. The second thing she did was file a restraining order against George, documented everything, every bruise, every threat, every time he'd hurt her. The third thing she did was set up a meeting with Garrison's business rival. His name was Klaus Reinhardt, and he'd been trying to acquire Garrison's company for years. Laura had done her research late at night while the twins slept. She knew what information he'd pay for, what secrets were worth. They met in a restaurant that cost more for one meal than Laura used to make in a month. "Miss Howes," Klaus said, shaking her hand. His grip was firm, assessing. "I was surprised to receive your call, intrigued but surprised. I have information about Garrison's real estate holdings, specifically which properties are over-leveraged and vulnerable to acquisition, which partnerships are on shaky ground, which deals are about to fall through." Laura met his eyes. "I want legal protection in return." Klaus smiled. "What kind of protection?" "I need lawyers who can fight Garrison if he tries to take my children. The best custody attorneys money can buy. People who won't be intimidated by his connections or his threats. In return, I'll give you everything you need to take down his empire piece by piece." "That's quite an offer. My father is dying. He wants control over my life before he goes. Control over my children. I'm not going to let that happen." Laura's voice was cold. "Help me destroy his power, and you get what you want." Klaus studied her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "We have a deal." Over the next 2 weeks, Laura became someone she didn't recognize. She studied Garrison's business files with an intensity she didn't know she possessed, staying up until 3 a.m. while the twins slept, memorizing numbers and names and connections. She memorized contract details, found the weak points in his empire. She learned how his empire worked so she could help Klaus tear it apart piece by piece, brick by brick. And through it all, Daniel was there, not helping, not interfering, not asking questions, just present. He'd show up at the apartment every morning with coffee, 2 sugars, extra cream, the way she liked it even though she'd never told him. He'd play with the twins while Laura worked, making them laugh with silly faces. He'd leave without asking questions about what she was doing. Laura didn't know what to do with him. This man who'd lied to her, who'd stalked her, who'd somehow become the most stable presence in her life. One evening, after the twins were asleep, Laura finally asked him, "Why do you keep coming back?" Daniel looked up from the book he'd been reading to River earlier, something about trains. "Because I told you I would. I don't trust you." "I know. I might never trust you." "I know that too." Daniel set down the book. "But I love you anyway, and love doesn't require trust. It just requires showing up every day, no matter what." Laura felt something crack in her chest. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Probably." Daniel smiled sadly. "But it's true." He left before Laura could respond. That night, lying in bed, Laura realized she was falling in love with him. Not because he'd saved her. Not because he'd given her an apartment or bought formula or fixed leaky faucets, but because he'd let her save herself. And he'd stayed anyway. Through her anger, her accusations, her justified rage at his lies. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. George was suing for custody. Garrison was funding it with unlimited resources. And Laura was ready. She walked into that courtroom with Tessa Riggs and Klaus Reinhardt's entire legal team, 5 of the best family law attorneys in the state. She wore a suit Klaus had bought her, tailored to fit perfectly. She carried documentation of every abusive thing George had ever done, including phone recordings of him admitting the twins weren't his, calling them bastards, saying he never wanted to see them. George's lawyer stood up and painted Laura as unstable, homeless when she gave birth, uneducated, living off charity from a man with a criminal past who'd been stalking her. Laura's lawyer destroyed him in cross-examination, pointed out that Laura now had stable housing in her own name, had financial resources, had a support system, had done everything right. Then Laura took the stand. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't play the victim card. She spoke truth. "My father thinks money makes him qualified to raise children," she said calmly, looking directly at the judge. "It doesn't. Money can buy things. It can buy lawyers and houses and influence, but it can't buy the kind of love those babies need. It can't buy patience at 3 a.m. when they're crying. It can't buy the willingness to put their needs before your own every single day. She looked at George, who wouldn't meet her eyes. Their biological father thinks DNA makes him a parent. It doesn't. He called them bastards. He kicked us into the street when they were 3 weeks old. He told anyone who would listen that they weren't his. He denied them. Biology means nothing without responsibility, nothing without showing up. Then she looked at the judge. The man who has changed their diapers at 3 in the morning when I was too exhausted to stand, that's their father. The man who taught me how to soothe their colic, who made sure they had formula when I had nothing, who shows up every single day without asking for anything in return. That's family. Not the people who share my blood and want to control my life like I'm a business asset. The judge ordered a recess. Laura sat in the hallway with Tessa, her hands shaking with adrenaline. "You did well," Tessa said. "Did I do enough? We'll know soon." The judge came back with a decision. Full custody to Laura, no visitation rights for George, a restraining order preventing Garrison from using legal means to obtain custody or control over the children. Laura won. But when she walked out of that courtroom, Garrison was waiting in his wheelchair, oxygen tank beside him. His face was grey. "You think you've beaten me," he said quietly, "but you haven't. I'll cut you out of my will. You'll get nothing, not a penny." Laura looked at the man who'd abandoned her mother and tried to buy her love with blood money, who thought everything had a price. "Good," she said. "I don't want anything from you. I never did." Garrison's face went white, then red. Then he clutched his chest, his eyes going wide. He collapsed in the courthouse hallway, his oxygen tank clattering to the floor, the tube ripping from his nose. Laura stood there, watching him gasp for air, watching people rush to help him, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, nothing. Then she walked past him and went home to her sons. Chapter 9. The Battle Garrison survived the heart attack, but barely. Laura heard about it from Thaddeus Crane, who called to inform her that Garrison had been rushed to the hospital in critical condition, had been resuscitated twice in the ambulance. He was asking for her. "Tell him no," Laura said, and hung up. She didn't owe Garrison anything. Not her forgiveness, not her presence, not even her grief. But 2 days later the hospital called again. This time it was a nurse with a kind voice. "Mr. Howes is dying," the woman said gently. "He has a few hours at most. He keeps asking for you. For Laura. He's quite agitated about it." Laura sat with the phone in her hand, the twins playing on the floor in front of her with blocks Daniel had brought, and tried to feel something, anything. "I'll think about it," she finally said. She didn't go. Garrison Howes died alone in a hospital room at 3:17 in the morning, surrounded by expensive equipment and empty chairs. Nurses who didn't know him, doctors who'd never met him before that day. His fortune went to various charities, museums, universities, hospitals, all buildings that would bear his name. Laura got exactly what she'd told him she wanted. Nothing. The funeral was massive. Politicians gave speeches. Business moguls praised his vision. Society people who'd never spoken to Laura in her life wore black and dabbed at their eyes. They all gave speeches about Garrison's legacy, his vision, his contribution to the city, how he'd be remembered. Laura didn't attend. But Daniel did. He showed up at her apartment the evening of the funeral, looking exhausted, his tie loosened, his eyes red. "I went for you," he said, "in case you wanted to know what they said." "I don't." "Okay." Daniel sat down on the floor next to River and Stone. They immediately crawled to him, tiny hands grabbing at his jacket like he was home base. "Dada!" Stone babbled. Laura's breath caught. It was the first word either twin had said. "Dada," River echoed, patting Daniel's face with chubby hands. Daniel looked at Laura, his eyes wet with tears he was trying to hold back. "Don't," Laura said. "Don't apologize for it. Don't minimize it. They chose you. Let them." Daniel picked up both twins, holding them like they were the most precious things in the world. His whole body was shaking, and Laura finally understood. This was family, not blood, not obligation, not money or control or carefully orchestrated business arrangements. Just two babies who saw the man who'd shown up every single day and called him father. "I love you," Laura said. Daniel's head snapped up, the twins still in his arms. "What?" "I love you. Not because you saved me. Not because you gave me an apartment or bought formula or helped me fight for my children." Laura's voice was steady, certain. "I love you because you let me save myself. Because you stayed even when I hated you, even when I was cruel to you. Because you earned their trust and mine through consistency, not grand gestures or empty promises." Daniel set the twins down gently in their playpen. He stood up and crossed the room, stopping just in front of Laura. "I don't deserve you," he said. "I know, I don't deserve you either." Laura reached up and touched his face, feeling the stubble, the warmth of his skin. But maybe that's the point. Maybe love isn't about deserving. Maybe it's about choosing each other anyway. Daniel kissed her, soft and gentle and full of 6 months of waiting, 6 months of longing, 6 months of hope he'd tried to bury. River started crying. Then Stone joined in, offended at being ignored. They broke apart, laughing through tears. "Terrible timing, boys," Daniel said, picking them up again. But Laura saw the way he held them, the way they settled immediately in his arms like they belonged there, the way they were a family without needing paperwork to prove it. "Marry me," she said. Daniel froze. "What?" "Marry me. Not because Garrison wanted me married, not because society says single mothers need a man, but because I choose you. Because you're already their father in every way that matters. Because I trust you." Laura's voice cracked. "Because I love you, and I want to build a life with you." Daniel set the twins back in their playpen. He turned to Laura and dropped to one knee. "Laura Howes," he said, "I have lied to you, stalked you, and complicated your life in ways you never asked for. I have loved you from a distance and up close. I have watched you become the strongest person I know. And if you'll have me, broken as I am, flawed as I am, I will spend every day of the rest of my life showing up for you and those boys. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Laura said. They got married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Just them and the twins. No guests, no elaborate plans, no expensive dress or catered reception or photographers. Just two people choosing each other. The twins wore matching outfits that Daniel had insisted on buying, little suits with bow ties. River threw up on the judge's shoes. Stone screamed through the entire ceremony like he was being murdered. It was perfect. Afterward, they went back to the apartment, Laura's apartment, in her name, the first thing she'd ever owned, and ordered pizza because neither of them had thought about dinner. "Not exactly a honeymoon," Daniel said. "Better," Laura replied. "This is real. This is us." That night, after the twins finally fell asleep, Laura and Daniel sat on the couch together. Daniel had his arm around her. Laura had her head on his shoulder. "Do you regret it?" Daniel asked. "Refusing Garrison's money? You could have had everything he built." "No," Laura said. "He tried to buy control of my life. I don't want anything that comes with strings attached. I want freedom more than I want money." "You still have the 400 million. I'm setting up a foundation. For women leaving abusive relationships, they'll have housing, legal support, job training, therapy, childcare. Everything I wish I'd had." Laura looked up at Daniel. "Money only matters if you use it to free people, not control them." Daniel kissed her forehead. "You're going to change lives, hundreds of them, thousands." "I'm going to try." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Laura asked the question that had been haunting her. "Do you really love me? Or do you love the idea of saving me?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "In the beginning, maybe it was about saving you, about finding redemption for not saving my family, for failing them. But somewhere along the way, it became about you. The way you fought back even when you were terrified, the way you protected your boys, the way you refused to settle for anything less than respect, even when people told you you should be grateful for scraps." He turned to look at her. "I don't love you because I saved you. I love you because you saved yourself. and you let me be part of that journey." Laura kissed him, deep and real and full of promise and future. "I choose you," she said, "every day, for the rest of our lives. I choose you too." Outside, the city continued its endless motion, but inside that small apartment with 2 sleeping babies and 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their worst moments, there was peace, and that was enough. Chapter 10. The Life. She chose. 6 months had changed everything. River and Stone were almost 11 months old now, pulling themselves up on furniture, taking wobbly steps while holding onto the couch, babbling constantly in their own twin language that only they understood. They'd both started calling Daniel Dada consistently, and neither Laura nor Daniel had the heart to correct them. Why would they? It was true, because Daniel was their father. Not biologically, not yet legally, though the adoption papers were in process, being reviewed by a family court judge who seemed sympathetic to their case, but in every way that mattered, in midnight feedings when Laura was too exhausted to move, in diaper changes and silly songs, and endless patience with teething and colic, he was their dad. Laura's foundation had launched quietly 3 months ago, no press conference or ribbon-cutting ceremony. Just a building on the east side with 8 apartments, a legal clinic staffed by former prosecutors, and a childcare center run by early childhood education experts. 32 women had found shelter there in the first 3 months. 32 women who'd walked in with black eyes and empty pockets and no hope, and walked out with job training and restraining orders and hope for the future. Laura ran it herself. She'd hired staff, social workers with decades of experience, lawyers who specialized in domestic violence cases, childcare providers who understood trauma, but she was there every day, meeting with residents, understanding their stories, remembering what it felt like to have nowhere to go and no one who cared. Daniel had returned to photography. His real passion before witness protection had forced him underground and into a life of hiding. He'd opened a small studio 3 blocks from the apartment where he photographed families. Real families. Messy, complicated, beautifully broken families who looked nothing like the perfect magazine spreads. They weren't rich. The 400 million sat mostly untouched in accounts designated for the foundation, earning interest that funded operations. Laura and Daniel lived on the income from his photography business and her modest foundation salary. The apartment Daniel had given her was enough, more than enough. They didn't need Garrison's mansion or George's false promises of a better life. They had each other. They had the twins. They had the life they'd chosen, built brick by brick from nothing. It was late afternoon when the knock came. Laura answered the door to find George standing in the hallway. He looked different, older, with grey at his temples that hadn't been there before. Sober still, if his clear eyes and steady hands were any indication, but there was something in his expression that Laura recognized: desperation. "I know I have a restraining order," George said quickly, the words tumbling out. "I'm not trying to violate it. I wanted to talk to you. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Then I'll leave and never bother you again." Laura should have called the police, should have slammed the door, should have protected herself and her family. But something stopped her. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the knowledge that she didn't fear him anymore. Maybe it was wanting to hear what excuse he'd come up with this time. "Say what you came to say," Laura said, keeping the door mostly closed, her body blocking the entrance. "I'm getting married," George said, "to a woman I met in AA. Her name is Jennifer. She's good, patient, kind. Nothing like you." Laura almost laughed at that. "Congratulations. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. For everything." George's voice cracked, real tears in his eyes. "I was drunk and angry and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of what I did to you. And I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to hear it. I needed to say it out loud." Laura looked at this man who'd once convinced her she was worthless, who'd spent 3 years systematically destroying her self-worth, who'd hit her and screamed at her and kicked her out with newborn babies into the rain. She felt nothing, no anger, no hurt, not even satisfaction at how broken and desperate he looked, just nothing. He was a stranger, someone from another life. "I forgive you," she said quietly. George's eyes widened. "Really? You mean that?" "Yes. Because holding on to anger toward you would give you power over me, and I'm done giving you power. I'm done letting you take up space in my head." Laura's voice was steady. "I hope you have a good life, George. I hope you treat your new wife better than you treated me. I hope you become the man you're pretending to be. But I don't want you in my life. Not now, not ever." Can I just see them? The twins, just once? Just to know they're okay?" "No. But I'm their father." "You're the man who donated DNA. Daniel is their father. He's the one who shows up. He's the one they call for when they're scared or hurt." Laura started to close the door. "Don't come back here. Move on with your life, George. Let me live mine." She shut the door before George could respond. Daniel appeared from the bedroom, the twins in his arms, both boys reaching for Laura. "Was that—" he started. "George, he's gone." Laura took River from him, and he's never coming back. They stood in the quiet apartment, their sons babbling between them, and Laura marveled at how far she'd come. From the park bench, where she'd had nothing, no home, no hope, no future, to this moment, where she had everything that mattered. That evening, they had a small celebration. It was River and Stone's almost birthday. They'd turn 1 year old in 2 weeks. Laura had made a cake from a box mix because she still didn't know how to bake from scratch. Daniel had bought ridiculous party hats, shaped like dinosaurs. The twins smashed cake into their faces with chubby fists, laughing hysterically, getting it in their hair and ears and somehow on the ceiling. Daniel took photos with his professional camera, documenting every messy, beautiful moment. Later, after the twins were asleep and the kitchen was cleaned and the world was quiet, Laura and Daniel sat on the small balcony of the apartment, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever regret it?" Daniel asked. "Giving up Garrison's money? Walking away from his entire fortune? You could have had everything. His company, his connections, his power." "I have everything," Laura said, taking his hand. "I have you. I have the boys. I have work that matters, work that helps people. What else is there?" Most people would say security, luxury, power, a mansion, a legacy. Most people don't know what it's like to have nothing. Laura leaned her head on his shoulder. "I learned something important from having nothing. You can't buy peace. You can't buy love. You can't buy the feeling of knowing you built your own life on your own terms, brick by brick." Daniel kissed her hand. "You're going to save so many women with that foundation. You already are." "I hope so. I hope I can be for them what I needed someone to be for me." They sat in comfortable silence, the city humming below them, alive and endless. Inside the apartment, River started crying. Then Stone joined in, their voices harmonizing in that way only twins could manage. Laura and Daniel looked at each other and smiled. "Your turn," Laura said. "I did the last one," Daniel protested, but he was already standing. Daniel laughed and stood up, but before he went inside, he turned back to Laura. "I love you," he said. "I love you too, more than I ever thought I could love anyone." He went to comfort the twins, and Laura sat alone for a moment longer, looking out at the city. She thought about everything she'd survived. George's abuse, homelessness with 2 newborns, Garrison's manipulation, the court battle that could have destroyed her, the constant fear that she wasn't enough, would never be enough, couldn't protect her children. And she thought about what she'd learned, that being enough wasn't about money or status or having the perfect life or living up to other people's expectations. It was about showing up for yourself, for the people you loved, day after day, choice after choice, building something real out of the wreckage. Daniel appeared in the doorway, both twins in his arms. They want you, he said. Laura stood up and took her sons, breathing in their baby smell, milk and soap and something uniquely them, feeling the weight of them in her arms. River patted her face. Mama. Stone echoed him. Mama. Their second words. First Dada, now Mama. Laura looked at Daniel, her eyes wet with tears she didn't bother to hide. Did you hear that? I heard. I'll remember this moment forever. They stood together in the doorway, their family complete, and Laura realized this was the moment she'd been fighting for all along. Not the money, not the victory over Garrison or George, not even the revenge of showing them that she'd survived without them, that she'd built something better. Just this ordinary, beautiful, perfectly imperfect moment. A family they'd chosen, a life they'd built together. Love that asked for nothing but gave everything. I'd choose this every time, Laura said quietly. I'd choose you and these boys and this life over everything else, over billions of dollars, over mansions, over everything, every single time. Daniel pulled her close, careful not to crush the twins between them. Same, he whispered, every time, forever. And in that small apartment, with the city lights glowing beyond the windows and two babies falling asleep in their parents' arms, Laura Howes finally understood what freedom felt like. It felt like home. The end.